Good morning. Let me see. Thank you very much, Senators, for coming in this morning for session. We have Senator Munya Barnes, Senator Yamashita, Senator Sam Mabini, Senator Chris Duenas, Senator Manas Tahiran, Senator Adolfo Palacios, Senator Guthard, Senator Respicio, Senator Ada, Senator Frank Blas, and Senator Tony Ada. So we do have a quorum, and we had recess from last week from the state funeral. As soon as the clerk comes in with the agenda, then we will begin.
Very much, Madam Speaker, and good morning. Madam Speaker, I understand that at the conclusion of the delegates' remarks that the legislature recessed.
Yes.
So at this time, I make a notwithstanding motion that we revert back to motions.
On that motion, without any objections, so ordered.
My first motion, Madam Speaker, is that we adopt the session agenda with the title of the top right-hand corner amended,
On that
labeled
motion?
amended.
No objections, so ordered.
In my second motion, Madam Speaker, given that this amended session agenda has just been adopted, if you go to the second reading file on item 11, bill number 46, at the request of the sponsor, Senator Tony Ada, he's requesting that this bill be referred back to the committee. So I also make that notwithstanding motion.
Without any objections, so ordered.
My next motion, Madam Speaker, is a customary motion. You see we have 28 items in the consent calendar and 31 items on the second reading file. I make a motion that in the event we come to a particular item and the sponsor may either need more time or is not available at the moment to present or preside over that item, that item just be set aside, and then on the sponsor's signaling to you, Madam Speaker, then we would take that item up so it doesn't lose its place on the agenda.
On that motion, without any objections, so ordered.
And my next motion is to excuse the Vice Speaker from this session and from this voting.
On the motion, without objections, so ordered.
And my next notwithstanding motion is to proceed to legislative concurrence. Actually, so Madam Speaker, at this time I defer to Speaker Ben for item 8, and if you would come back to me after his...
Okay, we are on motions and item 8 of page 2 of your agenda. Senator Ben Pangilinan, you're recognized. Here, you want... no, your letter. I have your... Oh, sorry. Okay.
This must say, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I'd like to make a motion, notwithstanding the objections of the Governor, vetoed Bill number 36-31 COR, relative to establishing the Government of Guam Mitigation Program for Business Interruption, be placed in the voting file for the purpose of an override.
And you would like to speak on it? Yes, you may proceed.
Thank you, and Sidus Masi, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, in the first session of this legislature, and during the first quarter of this legislative term, one of the main issues that has faced this community as well as this legislature is the construction projects that have been implemented that have gone awry, and the effect that that planning or lack of planning, lack of execution of the plan, no matter what the reason is, the end result has been that in specifically to two projects that have been implemented, the Sinahanya project and the Barrigada Tri-Intersection project, which some members of our community have dubbed the tragic intersection project, have affected the lives of the residents in that community, everyone who passes through those areas, and most importantly, the lives and the viability of businesses in that area that have had to deal with the interruption in their business activity due to the planning and the execution of the projects. We have seen and had testimony from the different mayors of the different villages in which these projects are occurring, and the residents of that community on how disruptive it has been and how it has affected their lives. Concurrently, we have heard from the businesses in those community how the continued delay in the construction, the lack of coordination by the contractors, DPW, and the community itself has resulted in real and viable threat to their continued existence. We have seen businesses that have cut hours. We have seen businesses that have cut employees. We have seen businesses in which the management, and these are small, I'm talking mostly about the small mom and pop businesses, small business couples, families, how they have made every sacrifice they can to continue operation despite the continued challenges that they face. And we are now just at a point with these businesses where without any intervention and without any assistance by this government, which has caused the problem to these businesses because of the lack of timely and efficient execution of these projects, that they just can't hang on anymore and they need some kind of help. And so based upon the outcry that we saw and the concern that have been voiced by the different mayors, we proposed, or I proposed, and this body, many of us have proposed, a program to help these businesses deal with this interim disruption of their service to try and help them survive the project schedules that have been delayed. And so my proposal was in the form of Bill 36. The direct goal of Bill 36 as passed by this body is to provide these businesses with assistance by the creation of a program at the Guam Economic Development Authority. And we wanted to create a program not specifically for this certain projects now, but that can survive into other projects if the government fails to execute its plans and to coordinate the construction activity to minimize the disruption. And because these are federally funded projects and they have been ongoing, the opportunity to provide assistance through the federal grant is not available in these projects. And so in Bill 36, one of the amendments that was made was for DPW to coordinate on future projects so that they can provide and set aside money if possible, which we know is possible in future projects. But we need to do something now, and in instances where there may not be available resources from federal grants, that we have some local resources available to these businesses. And so we created two programs under Bill 36 to be administered by the Guam Economic Development Authority. The first program is a loan program. And this basically makes businesses eligible to avail themselves of a loan through the Guam Economic Development Authority that will give them a line of working capital for expansion of the business, expansion of lines, anything that they can do that would help them survive the construction period when it interrupts their business activity and their revenue base. And it will keep the employees working. That's the other side that we need to take a look at this. We're not helping only the business owners, because when we help those business owners, it means that their employees continue to be productive, continue to be employed, continue to have an opportunity to feed their families. So the first program sets aside $1 million and directs GIDA to reprogram funds from an existing loan program to help these businesses. And Gita has no problem with that. I think that they have indicated in a board meeting in December that they're willing to do this kind of reprogramming to assist these businesses. Now, the governor said in his veto message that Gita already has a program to assist this business, so we don't need to create new ones. Well, I think that the governor is correct that there are programs for loans at Gita, but nothing really that addresses this problem. When these businesses, for example, in Barragata most especially, went to Gita, they keep getting directed to this microloan program. So every time they say, what can you do to help me? They say, we've got this microloan program. But the microloan program is not the activity that has occurred there, and the kind of loans these people need are not covered under the criteria for the microloan program. It's either not enough money, or the uses of the funds that Gita got under the federal grant does not make these companies are eligible for those funds. So they really need to reprogram some funds, which they have, which they were willing to do. And so on that area, I think we're pretty safe in that. The other program that we created is a grant program for the even smaller businesses, the real, true one-person, two-person with 3-employee kind of business that, is a family-owned, family-run business. And so these people would be eligible for a grant of up to $12,000 over a 3 month, to be dispersed over three months to help them again with rent, with other necessities of ensuring that they keep the power on and keep the doors open and they keep their employees working. And so we set aside $400,000 from the Guam Economic Development Authority's operating fund for the purpose of providing seed money for this. And then we also provided the flexibility that if Gita should decide and research and find that they can buy business interruption insurance on behalf of these companies, and that becomes a more efficient use of the funds at Gita, that they can do that. And so the governor in his veto message said, you can't do that, it's cost prohibitive, and why are you going to require it? We're not requiring them. We're making it permissive. We're saying that if you do your homework, if you find that in order to provide these grants, you can do it through the purchase of business interruption insurance, and you can do it more efficiently than if you provided straight out grants from the $400,000 funding, then you have the option of going there. But the idea is to provide that seed capital of $400,000 for these businesses whose gross income are less than $500,000 a year. And so these are the two types of programs. And the governor objected once again, and Gita was concerned that there's no money there. Well, Madam Speaker, in the handout I gave this morning, which talks about the financial impact of Bill 36 on Gita's financial position, we had a member of our staff look at Gita's financial statements and make a determination in our analysis on whether or not there really is $400,000 available to help these small businesses from Gita's current financial resources. And I'll have you know that, our office staff who prepared this is a CPA. He's been auditing businesses and has worked for Deloitte & Touche. So I have real confidence in the validity and the accuracy of this analysis that we did. So the policy, of course, and the main argument against the adoption was that the funding source, most especially the $400,000, will adversely affect the current operations of Gita, implying that the appropriations to support the program will compete for the other resources for current operational requirements at Gita. Our review, of course, doesn't substantiate that proposition by Gita. The funding source, Bill 36, provides that the business interruption insurance, I go back to that, up to $2 million is purchased using revenue generated from bond or origination fees, and the appropriation of $400,000 for Gita's operational fund balance. Based on the financial statements, expenses, and changes in the net assets for years ended September 30, 2010 and 29, GIDA earned a total of $559,000 in 2010 and $304,000 in 2009 from bond fees. So we took the bond fee, that's over close to $1 million in bond fees in the last 2 years that were not part of GIDA's regular operating funding source. These are funds that really kind of like are non-recurring income because they only occur when we have bond issues. But over the last 2 years, they've earned over $1 million. And we're saying, you know, from the bond fees or from your current operating revenue, we'll take that $400,000. So clearly, there's more than enough in the bond fees. GIDA, once again, is in New York going to float another bond issue for the Tourist Attraction Fund. We estimate that GIDA's income from that bond issue could be somewhere in the neighborhood of $100,000 to $200,000. Again, non-recurring income that's not part of the recurring operating requirements or supports their current operating requirements. So we are very confident in the event that GIDA does not seek to avail itself of this bond fees, then the funding for the grant program would be a $400,000 appropriation from the operational fund balance. Now, a fund balance is defined as the difference between the fund assets and the liabilities, which represents the residual interest of an entity. As GIDA is a proprietary fund, the corresponding term to fund balance is net assets. So is there enough money? Based on the statement of net assets of September 30, 2010, GIDA has a total net asset of $4 million. Of this, $3.4 million is unrestricted and available for use, for which is sufficient to fund the $400,000 in seed capital from the program without affecting current operational requirements. So GIDA has its current operational requirements from current revenues. It has its fund balance, its net assets in a separate area, and there's $4 million in there. There's $3.4 million of which is unrestricted, and all we're asking for is $400,000 to fund the grant program to assist these businesses, which is GIDA's mission, to help businesses in our community. And so what better use for that money than this time of need for these businesses from GIDA? So again, Madam Speaker, to evaluate the liquidity of GIDA's net assets, the composition of the current and non-current assets were examined. Based on the excerpts from the Statement of Net Assets of September 30, 2010, GIDA has a greater proportion of current than non-current assets, with the lion's share in investments. So they have money just parked there for investments. Their mission is to lend money, yet they just have money being parked there. Why can't we take part of that money, give it to these businesses to help them survive? As the Statement of Net Assets is organized by order of liquidity, GIDA has the ability to readily convert $400,000 in these investments to cash, as most of the investments depicted in the MSERPs do not have a fixed maturity date. And we show you from their financial statements, their investments total $3.7 million. They have the Guam Development Fund Act with $36,000 in there. So their total current assets is $3.9 million. Deferred charges of $62,500. Building and improvements, equipment. These are the hard assets which are not really liquid at $583,000 for total net equity and fund equity of $4.6 million, or net assets of $4.6. Where is this money? They have Federated Ultra Short Bond Funds, $1 million. No maturity date. There's no penalty for liquidating a portion of this. Once again, the Pacific Capital U.S. Government Securities Cash, $735,000. BlackRock Interim Government Bond Fund, $166,000. MFS Limited Maturity, $121,000. Franklin Adjustable U.S. Government Securities, $119,000. BlackRock Interim Government Bond Funds, $27,000. Federal Home Loan Mortgage Corporation, $482,000. The FNMA discount note, they have $481,000. The U.S. government treasury notes, $43,000. So their total liquid investment is $3.7 million. The $400,000 appropriation in Bill 36 provides the legal authority for GIDA to establish this grant program as passed by this law, and does not necessarily represent the program's cash requirements. We don't even know how many people are going to avail themselves out of the initial 400,000. It may only be that GIDA would only need 50,000 or 60,000 for the grant program, because that's the number of businesses that may qualify. So we're providing 400,000, but they don't need the 400,000 right away. It depends on the application and the eligibility of these individual companies. So the idea that we don't have the money, really, Madam Speaker, is really just contrary to the mission of GIDA and what they're supposed to be doing in terms of helping our business. They're very good about going off-island, promoting investments from off-island, bringing, granting, $800,000 for a Norwegian salmon company to come and study raising salmon on Guam. Max Havoc, $800,000 cash for a film for off-island companies that have defaulted on these things. We're taking our local money, giving it to these off-island people, and GIDA saying, hooray, that's great investment, we're doing a great job. But these individuals are saying they don't have $400,000 to make available to our own local businesses. They want to do economic missions to Thailand and everywhere else. They don't want to do an economic mission to Barrigada, Sinahanya, Malesu, Umatak. Where's our priority here? I can't see how these guys with a straight face come down here. I can't see how the governor can say there's no money, we're going to do it in another fashion, and nothing's happening. What's the matter? The business is not big enough? When are we going to help our own people? We're so quick with sending our money off island to these carpetbaggers, these guys who sell us a bill of goods, and they come in here, and we take cold, hard cash and give it to them. And we never see their face again. And we lose that money, we lose the opportunity to do something good for our own people with that money. But when it comes to our own people, when it comes to Martinez in Barrigada, when it comes to Maryland doing the water company, when it comes to that small fish store, the guy who goes out, risks his life fishing so he can sell it at that fish store, we don't have money to help them. What's the matter? They can't make a campaign contribution or what? That's what irks me about this veto, Madam Speaker. I started out to try to be so matter of fact about this. But it isn't that matter of fact, because there's a bias in this veto towards helping our own people. There are Guamanian businesses up there, Governor. Help those guys if that's what it takes. If you don't want to help a Chamorro business, then help that Guamanian business up there. Dalay timamahlo. Madam Speaker, I'm going to plead to my colleagues who decided not to vote for this bill when it was first introduced, who have gone out, and I commend them for taking the time to attend the meetings and the public hearings after this bill was passed and with the other bills that have been presented to also help these businesses. Because we all want that here. I commend my many colleagues in this hall who have presented proposals also to help these businesses. But I believe that this is one way we can help these people. This is one way that identifies the resources to help them. And it's before us now. And I thank you for listening to those individuals who came in and testified. The University of Guam Small Business Development Center, along canvassed every single business in the Barrigada area that was affected. And if you talk to those guys, they will say this is a good program. It's not a perfect program, but it is a good program. It's a good place to start. And there are real resources being made available in this. And those people are pleading. We are even requiring that the businesses who receive assistance through this program will work with the Business Development Center at the University of Guam so that they can assist them in coping with the change in their position of financial viability caused by the disruption in their service by the government's lack of timely execution of the construction projects out there. So we're not just giving them the money and say, go and do whatever you wish. We're requiring these individuals to work with the experts at the University of Guam Small Business Development Center to assist them in transitioning from this construction period to the completion period, and then moving forward and making their businesses viable and operational once again, so they can keep their employees working and keep their livelihood. The ones that they've poured their blood, sweat, and tears into, everything that they had. You know, some people, I won't mention the names, but you know how we get these requests to help people with tax refunds because they want to send a loved one off island for medical care, or they want to bury a loved one. Some of these people are taking their tax refunds and pouring it right back to the business because they don't want to lay off those two people. And if they can put that refund into the business, they can keep their employees working for another month. And they're hanging on. And that's the type of creativity that these individuals are using. That's the type of commitment they have to their company and their employees. Let's show some kind of commitment from this government. Let's show a little ounce of the same kind of commitment we show to these people who come from off island and say, give me money, and we fall all over ourselves to give them money. Let's just help these people, lend them a hand, help them out, because I think that we have a duty to do that. It is because we have failed as a government in the execution of our plans there to coordinate with them that has caused this. If we had planned this from the very beginning, if we had communicated with them, these individuals could have begun saving money for their operation during the construction period. But we didn't. We said, 6 months, don't worry, it'll be done. A year later, it's still not done, and then they're being told another year maybe or 8 months. They can't hang on. They need our help. I plead with all my colleagues, please give this your due consideration. Sidus Masi, Madam Speaker.
Buen provecho, Speaker Pangilinan. Are there anyone else wishing to speak on the motion? Senator Palacios and then Senator Guthertz. Consigi.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise in support of the override of Veto Bill 36. I share the sentiments, of course, and the observation of the last speaker and, of course, the author himself. I have to say that the Committee of Taxation did a very thorough research in assuring that the funding that's actually earmarked for to support the program will not in any way diminish the ability of GIDA to do what it's currently doing. There is sufficient funding, and that, I believe, the presentation of the last speaker. And although, according to the veto message of the governor, that the current problem that's supposed to be mitigated by Bill 36 is already being addressed by GIDA, I say that any additional alternate venue to remedy the current problem that's being suffered by the small businesses by the interruption of the road construction can only be helpful, Madam Speaker, to the businesses that are being affected. And there's just absolutely no harm to anybody or anything or any program if this body overrides Veto Bill 36. And I rise in support of that bill. It's a good bill, it's an honest bill, and it is a helpful bill. I hope that my colleagues will join in the override. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Buen provecho, Senator Palacios. Senator Guthertz, you're recognized on the motion.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I, too, support the override of the governor's veto of Bill 36. It's very sad the governor vetoed the bill. You know, our governor comes from a business family that's been involved in Guam business for decades. They really should understand the impact of these infrastructure projects on the viability of small businesses. Months ago, I was very vocal about this matter, and I'm still vocal because I still feel that many of these businesses have been left behind, and their issues really have not been addressed. Now we have a new leader at Public Works who says that she is cognizant of these concerns and wants to be responsive, and that's well and good. But that's not enough to keep these businesses from going under. GITA is the proper entity of this government to assist these businesses. This bill is a good bill, and we need to pass this bill. We need to make a statement that this legislature supports all business on Guam, big or small. Family-owned businesses, corporate businesses, and small entrepreneurs just trying to get by from day to day. You know, one of the businesses affected by this, to many parents is well known. It's a little education retail outlet that sells education materials for young children, to help parents give their children, you know, a good start, early childhood start education materials. And they're really suffering. Another business is a bakery, a well-known community bakery on our island that has yet to feel the full impact of these projects. Hopefully in the next few months they're going to see these road projects end, but they're fearful now because the construction is moving to their side of the street. And they're afraid that there will not be adequate access for them so that their customers can still come in and patronize their place. We have a gas station that's really seen a decrease in business, but inside that gas station is a small repair shop that maybe can do 6 or 7 cars a day and does car inspections in order to help pay the bills, which has sort of dried up. No one really wants to go inside there to get their car inspected because of the trouble it takes to get in and out. It's almost impossible. So this bill helps address some of the needs of these small companies so that they can stay afloat. They're not asking for anything for free. They just need a break so that they can sustain their operation over the next months until these projects are over with. So I stand in full support of this override, and I will look forward to seeing GITA respond when this becomes law in a forthright, aggressive manner. It seems to me they got on board only after the fact, after this bill was introduced, after the governor vetoed the bill. All of a sudden we saw GITA say, well, we're willing to help. We can help on using our existing programs. The microloan program won't work for these businesses. Ben is right. Senator Pangilinan is right. That's too small a program to help these businesses. They don't want to buy a lawnmower and they don't want to buy a bush cutter. They need to get a loan so they can pay the bills that accumulate between now and when these projects are over with to keep their doors open. So, Madam Speaker, I encourage our colleagues, if you're really supportive of business and you want to see small business grow, then support this override. Thank you very much.
Situs Mahasi, Senator Guthertz. Anyone else wishing to speak on the motion? If not, Senator Respicio, can you please take the bench?
Thank you, Senator Barnes. I recognize you at this time.
Situs Mahasi, Mr. Speaker, and Mananay Situs. Mr. Speaker, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak and rise in support to overwrite this bill number 36-31. And you know, Mr. Speaker, as I was sitting up there where you're at right now, and I was listening to the author of the legislation, Speaker Pangilinan, speak with a lot of passion. I was almost like mental telepathy, because as he was speaking, I was subconsciously thinking in my head, you know, what about our own people? We have a program that would give a maximum amount of $12,000 in times when it's really rough for our own local business people, and it gets vetoed. We look at the programs that exist today, and we always say that, you know, like the speaker from Mingilao said, that there's microloan programs going on, and Gita saying, oh yeah, we'll help now. We have an outreach program that's going on, and that one was, I guess that happened in Barragata on March 15. Oh, we're starting to do something now. But you know, Mr. Speaker, the author of the legislation, when he spoke about the businesses in Barragata, Sinahanya, Molesto, and Umanak, can you imagine the other businesses that would be that will be affected by this when the road construction continues? And you know what? You and I know that when it comes to road construction, what starts out to be 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months. I was sharing with you, Mr. Speaker, that what starts out to be 3 months or 6 months or 12 months usually doubles and sometimes even triples in as far as timeline. And we have a program here, a program that would provide and administer or empower Gita to administer a grant and loan program to assist small and medium-sized businesses that are adversely affected by the government projects. I say, what's wrong with that? The reason why I'm bringing it up, Mr. Speaker, is because as I looked at the voting sheet of this bill when it first came to play, I knew that we were split, and it was a bipartisan. It was a bipartisan split, or I mean a partisan split. It was 9 of us on the Democratic Party voted for the bill, and then the 6 on the other side voted nay on the bill. And I said to myself, I would be remiss if I didn't come and at least try to convince my colleagues on the other side of the aisle to really think about the effects of our own people, our own local community, our own people, where they can have a place to go to, that a program as little, not as big, but as little as this can make a difference for them to not to start up, Mr. Speaker, but to survive. You know, the author of the legislation spoke about us looking for development outside, getting creative, and giving opportunity to businesses that are not from Guam. But yet when it comes to our own people, our own local people, we say, never mind, no need. Better luck next time is what we probably say. But Mr. Speaker, I stand before you today because I feel that this, I know in my heart that this is the right thing to do, is to make sure that programs like this are not just initiated, but implemented, and made sure that programs like this exist for our own local people, small businesses to medium businesses, our own local families. That's where I stand, and I'm hoping, Mr. Speaker, that our colleagues will at least revisit the letter that was sent by the author of the legislation to ask to reconsider and look at the financial impact and seeing where our government is today and seeing what was done before. You know, the businessman from Sinahanya and that group there where the affected area was had a meeting, and he said that he felt really bad because the support wasn't there. But everybody else in the community of Sinahanya said they really felt that damaging effect of businesses, of that business and that business area being lost. And I say, Mr. Speaker, if there's anything that this August body should start to do is at least think for us, for our local community today. And this program, this bill number 36, is a right vehicle to make sure that our business, our small businesses and medium businesses know that in times of trouble because of the impact of our own government projects, and in order for us to grow, sometimes you got to give a little to get back a lot. And this is one time we say, go back to our people and saying, you know what? We will provide a little, because it's not a lot. We will provide a little so that in return, our own businesses, our own local Chamorros, our own local Guamanians will prosper and continue to keep our local people employed here on our beautiful tropical island. So I support this override, and I want to thank the good author, and I want to thank the previous speakers on this who stood up and spoke to support the override on this Bill 36. This is a good bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator Barnes, for that very convincing argument in support of the override. I'd like to recognize the minority leader, and I'll also ask you, Senator Barnes, to resume the chair.
Before you get down, thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, Mr. Speaker, and Madam Speaker, thank you for that argument. Okay, that tried to convince. You know, Madam Speaker, and before and when you took the floor to provide, I agree with everything you said. And I agree with everything that everybody else has said with regards to the bill. And I don't think there's anybody in this body here that could agree to that. And I recognize that the governor had vetoed the bill based on issues that his administration were concerned about. But I must speak of the reason and the concern that I had and I continue to have with regards to the bill. And I bring this as an offer that, Madam Speaker, I have to agree. It's a great idea. And you're right. We need to help our people. And I agree with the, as a matter of fact, I agree with the author of the bill. And I've always been, and I will continue to be, an individual that will say, our people first. I agree that there may have been some programs, or there may have some grants or some loans for that matter, that were provided by this government to other individuals outside of our community, that didn't make any sense, that didn't live up to its promises. That, in my opinion, should not have occurred, but they did. But with regards to those areas, then yes, maybe we got to look at ways to be able to tighten the screws with those programs. My concern, and I'm going to, my concern that I have is do we have enough? Is there going to be enough? How far are the parameters to this program? You know, yes, and we talk about those businesses in the immediate area, and we constantly refer to, you know, those businesses directly impacted, and the places we see right that are affected right at the tri-intersection, Route 8, 10, and 16, which, by the way, I frequent on a daily basis. I recognize them. I know them. I lived with them. I rely on them. I see their pain. But my concern with the program is in recognition that it also is going to impact other programs and future programs, future projects. Is there going to be enough? Is it going to be sustainable? Is it going to be in place long enough that once we get past the tri-intersection, once we get past the Route 4 improvements in Sinonia, is there going to be that same opportunity for those businesses that will be impacted in future projects? God knows where they're going to be. That's a whole lot of the discussion we can have in this floor. And so the offer that I have is in recognition and seeing the great idea that's presented in this bill. Is maybe there's an opportunity to be able to clearly define, first off, where a continued funding source will come from, where it helped to clearly define those individuals or those projects or those businesses that are going to be eligible because of these certain projects. So that way, this is not something that we need to revisit 3 years down the road. This is now a program, and I don't have a problem giving a mandate to GITA that as part of their projects, because it's a continued discussion. You know, the colleague that sits to the right of me here, you know, also has a great idea with regards to mitigation opportunities or mitigation plans for businesses. And I like the opportunity to be able to meld the two ideas together. So, Madam Speaker, personally, I'm not averse to that. My concern is once we get past the tri-intersection, once we get past Sinonia, once we get past utilizing the seed money, the money that exists, is then what of those businesses 2-3 years down the road that are going to get impacted as well? Is there going to be this, is this program sustainable enough to be around for those businesses 2-3 years down the road? Because, Madam Speaker, you and I both know what we're seeing right now with regards to the construction projects, that's the tip of the iceberg. If all the claims that from the military and the other powers that be come to fruition, quite honestly, if you're going to try to condense or to fit all the projects that are going to be necessary so that you can fit it into a timeline that you want to meet, God help us. Because then we're going to have to be dealing with a number of issues. Maybe in one of the issues that we're going to have to be dealing with down the road is businesses losing employees to other businesses. But that's another discussion down the road. But what am I getting at is this program. Is a program such as this. Can we make it so that it's sustainable for years to come? So despite the objections provided by the governor in his veto, that's his concern. I've got to say that it didn't address some of the concerns I had. So, recognizing the deliberative nature of this body, and that this body as a whole wants to do what's best for the people of Guam, and recognizing that there's time between the discussion here and when we're going to have to decide on the matter, I'm not adverse to possibly looking at ways that we can make this bill better. I love the idea. Don't get me wrong. My concern is the sustainability. So, I didn't come forth to bring a convincing discourse as you did. It's just to be able to air a concern that I have with this. Okay? And to please say, Madam Speaker, we are all on the same page. My area of concern is the sustainability of it. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Si Diyos Masi, my brother Frank. Anyone else wishing to speak on the motion? Senator Tom Atta? Consigi, por favor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise in support of the override, the veto of Bill 36-31. Of course, the committee that I chair has oversight of public works, and I have been intimately involved with the tri-intersection project and, of course, the other road construction projects. And I believe that, at least in the briefings that I've been in, the discussions that I've had, is that the tri-intersection project was probably prematurely let out of the starting gate because, and for whatever reasons, it was prematurely let out. And consequently, the businesses in the area were substantially impacted more than they probably would otherwise have been had the project been better planned out. A good example is that after the project was let out, 3 months later, DPW was still trying to resolve the issue of getting bypass permission to get onto Tizan to provide additional bypass roads. After 3 months, it was finally decided that that was probably a hurdle that they weren't going to be able to resolve in a timely manner. In addition to that, the project probably should have had a bit more analysis as to what was the conditions that was underneath the roadway that they were going to be digging up. For example, there was a lot more delays put in because as they were starting to dig on Route 16, we found out that the soil conditions underneath required a little bit more excavation that was initially planned. And as they continued with their excavation, they found that there was utilities down there. And these were findings that had better prior planning been accomplished, they could have better anticipated these hurdles. And so as a result, there was more and more delays. Even up to this very day, the modus operandi has been kind of the attitude of, well, the contractor has up until this date to complete that project. And we expect that he will get there. And so, as opposed to, I guess in my mind, DPW should really be working alongside with the contractor and basically anticipating, looking down the road as to what are the things that are happening, what are the things that are not being anticipated effectively, so that we avoid any delays, any more delays than we have to. So I really feel that this is a good case where it got out of the starting gate prematurely, and as a result, we came up with all these delays, and that the businesses in that area certainly got impacted more than they otherwise would have been. To this very day, they're supposed to start on the second phase. And, you know, there was this beautiful engineering plan as to how they were going to dig up areas in front of businesses and do it in a way so that it is not totally isolated and you can't get into the business while that excavation is going on. And during one of the briefings, the businesses that were around the area were assured that before we start excavating in front of your business, we will meet with you and we will fully brief you of how this thing is going to be accomplished and give you the date so that you can start planning for it. And up to today, they still don't have that information. So, you know, I think I think that Bill 18 or 36-31 really represents a responsibility on the part of this government to help mitigate the impacts to those businesses that are being affected by this road construction project, in particular up at the tri-intersection, because we, the government, did not do as good a job as it could have, as it should have, in carrying out this project. Basically, for that reason, I rise in support of the override of the veto. And I would like to say, though, that I think as a result of the experience from the tri-intersection project, I'm certainly a lot more confident that other road projects that are coming down the road in the next several months are going to be carried out more effectively, and I don't think that we would see disruptions more than would otherwise be expected of a road construction project. Thank you very much.
Buen provecho, Senator Ada. Anyone else wishing to speak on the motion? Senator Tony Ada, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. You know, having a family business in one of the affected areas in Sinajana, I probably should be the first one to rise and support this override. But because of my colleague from Barragata has said, and I share the same concerns that he does, is that, you know, let's not look 3 years down the road or 2 years down the road. Let's look after this bill is enacted. How many businesses would this be able to assist? If you look at it, medium-sized businesses shall be granted loans up to $100,000. And small businesses shall be granted, eligible for grants up to $12,000 grants, and then they can apply also for the loans. If each business was to apply for a $100,000 loan, that's only 10 businesses in the program. How do we look at what businesses will be first? Who will be a priority? Will it be the small business that employs 3 people that got the $12,000 grant versus the medium business that wasn't eligible for the grant, but tried to get the loan, but because the small business got the loan, how would that medium business now be able to avail from this program? What is the, I know helping just one business, it's just like a person, helping one person makes a difference. Helping one business makes a difference. But we need to look at how many businesses will be affected in all the areas. Barragata, Sinahanya, wherever the projects are going to be. How many businesses are affected? How many businesses can we help? We talk about helping. Where does it begin and where does it end? So these are the things that goes through my mind when I think about this program or anything that comes before us. How much can we help? It's our obligation to help. It's our obligation to be there for the people. That's why they put us in here. So I agree with the rest of my colleagues that it is a good program. It really is. But for how long, how much, and how many? Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Situs Masi, Senator Ada. Are there anyone else wishing to speak on the motion? If not, Speaker Ben, you can close.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I listened intently, and I'm very grateful for those who spoke out on the bill, both voicing their support and voicing their concerns. This idea that we shouldn't do anything because we can't help everybody, I can't buy that. I just think that that's, I don't know what that is. That's like saying, hey, there's a fire over there, but we shouldn't put it out because we may not have enough water for the next fire. So we should just let it burn until we're sure we have enough water to kill out every fire that's going to come along. Simplistic? Yes, but that's exactly what I'm being told here. That we can't go forward with this program because we know we can't help everybody. Of course we can't help everybody. Even any bill that's introduced here can't help everybody. It's meant to help and begin the process. Is the program sustainable? I believe it is. We're going to set up a loan program. So when you get a loan, you pay it back. The next guy can get a loan from your repayment. And the interest that is charged, that's economics. Pure and simple. So is the program sustainable? Yes. Is it going to be able to help everybody? No. If that's what we want, then we can easily do that. But we need to start somewhere, and we need to start now, and we need to start with those people up in the Trian section and Sinahanya. Are we just going to let them just rot away? Butlers, 99 years in business. That project up there is killing him. Maybe this is not the solution to his problem, but it will certainly provide an opportunity for him to survive maybe one more year so he can be in business for 100 years of a local business. Don't we want to give him that chance? Don't we want to help one guy? Of course. But this idea that we can't help you because we don't have enough for the next guy and the next guy and the next guy. And by the way, we don't know how many next guys there are. But we know we don't want to help you. No, I cannot accept that. That is the rationale why you can't support this bill. And maybe maybe my position is not going to endear me to getting their vote, but it's just a cop-out. Sustainable? Of course, the loan program, sustainable. The grant program? Well, you know, let's start now and we'll find the resources. Every year, shouldn't we appropriate, you know, when we appropriate money to run this government, we should say we can't tell Rev and Tax, which we all want to help, let's give Rev and Tax 10 more employees because they need help, because we have the money for it this year. But by that logic, no, we're not going to give you that money for Rev Tax for those 10 employees this year, even though we have the money to help you, because we don't know how much money we're going to get next year, and we don't know whether we're going to keep those 10 employees. That's the same logic I'm being told. In that case, we can't run this government any other way. Is that the logic? Is that rational? That we can't do anything more than we're doing today because we don't know whether we can do it tomorrow? Well, in this case, in the loan program, we know we can do it tomorrow. We know that we're taking a chance on helping these people because we have injured them. The actions of this government in the bad planning and the bad implementation have injured these people, and we're trying to help them. And we're saying we can't help you because we don't know about tomorrow. We can't help you today. No, let's help those that we can help today, and let's face what's coming tomorrow when we plan for it. Well, you want a budget? You want to put it in the budget next year? We could do it. We could say that every bond issue from now till forever that GIDA issues, because they never know when we're going to issue until we pass it here, that all of that money goes into this program. We could do that. We could have a new bill to do it. Easy. But we got to do something now, today. You know, the deficiencies, some of it is common sense. It's like, are we willing to do something today for our own local businesses? And we have the money. It's sitting there, parked in off-island investments. It's not like the money's not there. It's not like it's tied up. We're taking our local money, investing it in off-island company, off-island investments, while our own local people are struggling, trying to survive, trying to generate economic activity for our community. They need help now. And those that come after them, we will find opportunities to help them too. One of the issues that I brought about, and I want to reiterate for sustainability, is that there was discussion, testimony, and we are working on it right now, that all of these federal funds for these road projects, that in other federal grant programs, in other communities, they have been able to set aside a portion of the federal grant for mitigation. There is an avenue to do some sustainable resource for these businesses that will come in the future when they are affected by the road construction. We're working on that right now. We're doing the research, we're doing the analysis, and we may need to augment this program with that. There's a proposal by a good senator who says he's not willing to do this now because he has another bill that will help them. Well, there's nothing wrong, and there's nothing that says that his bill can't help support those businesses as well. Make that sustainable. But what? He doesn't want to do this now that they need it and just wait for the other one? These people cannot wait. And I'll tell you, you know, if they're saying that this is it, the proposal that is being proposed and is supposed to be able to save these people, we're not supposed to discuss bills that are not on the floor. But I'm telling you, if you take a look at that bill, the assistance based upon how that bill is written is like, I don't know how many of these businesses pay use tax. And it's a rebate on the use tax. Not the gross receipts tax, the use tax. These small businesses don't pay any use tax. You know why? Because the use tax is a tax that you pay on supplies you bring in that is not for resale, that you yourself import from off island. So if you were Kmart and you're going to redo your store and you're going to buy drywall, rather than buying it from the local company here, you buy drywall from your supplier or Kmart in the States, you bring it in and you put it up in your store, you have to pay a 4% use tax on all that drywall. That's how the use tax is applied. But if you're a small business in Barrigada and you buy paper from Cosmos to resell in your store, or you buy chips from at wholesale, it costs you less, you don't pay a use tax on that because it's for resale. The only thing you pay a use tax on is what's not for resale in the operation of your business that you yourself import from off island. So when you look at that, is that the solution? It can help. But I am again saying we need to do something now. We need to do more. We need to ensure sustainability. And I think in that area, I've responded to that issue that at least on the loan program side, it's sustainable. On the grant side, we'll find these opportunities when we see the need arise. And if we're able to succeed in ensuring that when we implement these future road construction projects and we set aside the federal grant money, a portion for mitigation, then we don't need to find a local resource because there's where it's at. We can do that. All of these things are being done now. This is not the ultimate answer for the next 20 years. It is an answer for today, and I believe it's still an answer for tomorrow and the day after tomorrow. That it is sustainable and we can make it work. Gita saying no money, they're giving their employees a pay raise. That's how much money they have. They can afford to give employees pay raise. You're telling me you're not willing to take from what I have shown you from their own financial statements, analyzed by a CPA, that the resources are there, they're real, they're viable, they're liquid, and you just keep refusing to accept that we can use that for this instance because you don't know about tomorrow? Again, are we not going to put that fire out because we don't know we have enough water for the next one, but we know we have water to kill that fire? We know that fire that's burning, we have enough water to put it out today. Save some lives, save some businesses. But your rationale is, I don't want to do that because I'm not sure that we're going to have water for the next fire. Well, I say, let's put out that fire now. Let's help these businesses. Let's give them the resources. And when other businesses need help, we'll find a way to do that. And we are, again, I emphasize, we are working on that. We are working on the mitigation set aside under federal grants for future road construction projects. We are working on those things. It's not going to work for that program for these guys now because we didn't do it when the project was let out of the gate too early and has disrupted the economic viability of these businesses and threatens them. We've already had one business close and had to move away. That's what happened. And the others are hanging by a thread. And they're looking for a rope. And all it needs at this time for those people to get out of the hole is a 20-foot rope. And we have a 20-foot rope. Are we not going to extend that rope to them because we think there's a deeper hole there for 40 feet? And what are we going to do about the guy at 40 feet? Well, we see the guy at 20. We have enough rope to help him. Let's pull him up. Let's give him a lifeline. I plead with my colleagues to reconsider. I plead with them that this is not the end. This is the beginning. I plead with them that all their other ideas have a place to contribute to this solution. And I plead with them to consider our local people who are struggling not only for themselves as business owners, but struggling for the employees and the families that their employees support. Lend them a hand now. They need it. They're crying out for it. And I implore you to please give it your due consideration. Si Dusmasi, Madam Speaker.
Buen provecho, Speaker Pangilinan. Senator Respicio, you're now.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, can we proceed to item 14 of the agenda,
Legislative.
the legislative concurrence? I move that...
Mr. Majority Leader, Senator Respicio, the clerk has noted, I thought we moved to place the vetoed Bill 36 into the voting file, or did we do that already?
Oh, no, you're going to have to do on the motion.
On the motion,
Notwithstanding the governor's objections.
notwithstanding the governor's veto on Bill number 36 on the motion to put it on the voting file, without objection? Motion carries. Senator Respicio, you're
Thank you,
recognized.
Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, from the Committee on Rules, Federal, Foreign, and Micronesian Affairs and Human and Natural Resource on the appointment of Mr. Terrence M. Brooks, attorney, to serve as a member of the Guam Economic Development Authority Board of Directors with the confirmation to do confirm, I move that be placed in the voting file.
Without objection?
Madam Speaker, from the same
Motion
committee,
carries.
thank you. From the same committee on the appointment of Mr. William D. Nault to serve on the same board with my committee's recommendation to confirm, I move that be placed in the voting file.
Are there any objections? Without objection, motion
Yeah.
carries.
On item 3, Madam Speaker, from the same committee to the same board on the appointment of Mr. Jerome Rocco with that committee's recommendation to confirm, I move that be placed in the voting file.
Without objection, motion carries.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. From the same committee to the same board on the appointment of Ms. Ann Roth with that committee's recommendation to confirm, I move that be placed in the voting file.
Any objections? No objection, motion carries.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. From the same committee to the same board on the appointment of Mr. Ernie Victor Zhao with my committee's recommendation to confirm, I move that be placed in the voting file.
Any objections? No objection, motion carries.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. From your Committee on Municipal Affairs, Tourism, Housing, and Recreation on the appointment of Mr. Romeo Angel to serve as a member of the Guam Housing Corporation Board of Directors with your committee's recommendation to confirm, I move that be placed in the voting file.
Without objection, motion carries.
From your committee, Madam Speaker, on the appointment of Mr. Eduardo A. Calvo, an attorney, to serve as a member of the Guam Visitors Bureau Board of Directors with your committee's recommendation to confirm, I move that be placed in the voting file.
Any objections? No objection, motion carries.
From your same committee, on the appointment of Mr. Ricardo A. Calvo to serve as a member of the Guam Housing and Urban Renewal Authority Board of Directors with your committee's recommendation to confirm, I move that be placed in the voting file.
Without any objections, motion carries.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. From your committee, on the appointment of Ms. Shelley B. Calvo to serve as a member of the Hagåtña Restoration and Redevelopment Authority Board of Commissioners with your committee's recommendation to confirm, I move that be placed in the voting file.
Without any objection, motion carries.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. From your same committee, on the appointment of Ms. Jennifer R. Crisosimo to serve as a member of the Guam Visitors Bureau Board of Directors with your committee's recommendation to confirm, I move that be placed in the voting file.
Without any objection, motion carries.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. From your same committee, on the appointment of Mr. Francisco A. Florek to serve as a member of the Guam Housing Corporation Board of Directors with your committee's recommendation to confirm, I move that be placed in the voting file.
Without any objection, motion carries.
Thank you. From the Vice Speaker's Committee on Youth, Cultural Affairs, Procurement, General Governmental Operations, and Public Broadcasting, on the appointment of Ms. Kathy Ann Cruz Gogui to serve as General Manager of Guam Educational Telecommunications Corporation, KGTF/PBS, Guam, with his committee's recommendation to confirm, I move that be placed in the voting file.
Without any objection,
Thank you.
motion carries.
From the Vice Speaker's same committee, on the appointment of Ms. Lourdes B. Hongi to serve as a member of the Civil Service Commission With that committee's recommendation to do confirm, I move that that be placed in the voting file.
Without any objection, motion
Thank you.
carries.
From the Vice Speaker's committee, on the appointment of Mr. Alberto A. Lamarena V, a former senator, to serve as Executive Director of the Civil Service Commission with his committee's recommendation to confirm, I move that that be placed in the voting file.
Any objection? No objection, motion carries.
From the Vice Speaker's committee, on the appointment of Mr. Adonis Mendiola to serve as Director of Department of Youth Affairs with his committee's recommendation to confirm, I move that that be placed in the voting file.
Without any objection, motion carries.
Thank you. From the same committee, the Vice Speaker's committee, it's item 16, on the appointment of Ms. Edith Pangilinan to serve as a member of the Civil Service Commission with his committee's recommendation to confirm, I also move that that be placed in the voting file.
Without any objection, motion carries.
From your committee, Madam Speaker, on the Committee on Municipal Affairs, Tourism, Housing, and Recreation, on the appointment of Mr. Louis G. Paulino to serve as a member of the Guam Housing and Urban Renewal Authority Board of Directors, with your committee's recommendation to confirm, I move that that be placed in the voting file.
Without any objections,
Thank you.
Motion carries.
From your committee, on the appointment of Ms. Deanne S. Santori to serve on the same board, GORA Board of Directors, with your committee's recommendation to confirm, I move that that be placed in the voting file.
without any objection, motion carries.
From your same committee, on the same appointment to the same board, on the appointment of Ms. Deanne, well, that was a duplicate.
That's
So, yeah, so item 19 is moved. So from the Committee on Municipal Affairs, Tourism, Housing, and Recreation, item 20, on the appointment of Mr. Nathan Timinglow to serve as a member of the GVB Board of Directors, with your committee's recommendation to confirm, I move that that be placed in the voting file.
without any objection, motion carries.
From the Committee on Appropriations, Speaker Pangalinan's Committee, Appropriations, Taxation, Public Debt, Banking, Insurance, Retirement, and Land, on the appointment of Mr. Michael Borja to serve as a member of the Chamorro Land Trust Commission, with his committee's recommendation to confirm, I move that that be placed in the voting file.
Without any objection, motion carries.
From the same committee, on the appointment of Miss Rita Franquez to serve as a member of the Chamorro Land Trust Commission, with Speaker Pangalinan's committee's recommendation to confirm, I move that that be placed in the voting file.
Without any objection, motion carries.
From Senator Palacios' Committee on Public Safety, Law Enforcement, and Judiciary, on the appointment of Mr. John C. Salas as Fire Chief of the Guam Fire Department, with his committee's recommendation to confirm, I move that that be placed in the voting file.
Are there any objections?
Okay. There's been an objection raised, so we would call for the vote or discussion.
Are there anyone wishing to speak on the confirmation of Mr. John Salas? Senator Ada, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. In the many years that I've spent in the legislature, I've never really gotten up and spoken against a nominee that's been made by the governor. But in the case of the nominee for the Guam Fire Department, I really feel compelled that I need to rise and speak against a nomination based at least on the observations that I made during the confirmation hearings. Now, the Guam Fire Department is a department which provides public safety services in our community. It is a paramilitary organization, and it is really important that the head of that organization has got to be someone who has strong leadership qualities, has good management skills, and the vision as to where to take this department to make it better than what it is today. And it is even more important that that individual have these qualities, because our fire department has pretty much always been, as with many other departments, been really under budgeted to meet its requirements. And so as a result, you really need a head, a director in there who is able to know where he's going, where he wants to take this department, and how to do it as best as possibly can be done with minimal resources that they normally are provided. a good example of what causes me concern is that during the confirmation hearings, there was, of course, the controversy about overtime of the personnel who are assigned to the headquarters. Now, and the whole controversy started because the administrative services officer would not agree to signing off and paying overtime to these individuals until some kind of documentation, anything. Just give me something that says you worked these hours. And even that was very difficult for them to provide. So during the confirmation hearing, the nominee was asked, so henceforth, will you be providing some kind of documentation to support the overtime hours that are being claimed? And the response was, yes, yes, we'll do just that. We'll provide the documentations that are needed. Then as the conversation went around the table, another one of the senators asked, in fact made the statement, I think just the signature of the supervisor should be sufficient. What do you think? Yes, yes, that's good too. So which is it? Do you know whether you're coming or do you know whether you're going? Then when it came around to my turn, I complimented the individual that he read his very well written testimony, and he read it very well. That was good. So I asked him, put aside your testimony, please, and just give me in your own words, close your eyes, and paint me a picture of where you want to take this department, how you want to make it better than what it is today. Couldn't. So how can I put a leader in there? How can I cannot agree to vote to confirm an individual who really has no vision of where he's taken this department with what little resources he has. A department that is charged to provide public safety services in our agencies, in our community. And I've certainly, I've had to use the services of this department on several occasions when my mother was ill. And I tell you, I adore the ground that these people walk on because they do a good job. These firemen do a very good job. The EMTs, they are there when you need them. And they are there when, you really need them the most. And so I think that it is incumbent on us to make sure that these hardworking firemen are provided with a leader, a manager, who is able to take them to greater heights with the limited resources that they have, and provide public safety services to our community as best as this government could possibly afford. So I was just, I wasn't there to be impressed. I just had to sit there and take it in and listen to, is this the individual that I want to have charged with our public safety services? And so I raise an objection to the confirmation of this individual. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you very much, Senator Ada, on the confirmation of Mr. Salas. Senator Palacios, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, there's no doubt that the time has come really when firm, decisive leadership is what is needed in the Guam Fire Department. You look at the limited resources, the lack of ambulance services, and what appeared to be a lack of direction. And of course, the individual under consideration of confirmation has assumed that duty, I think, in January. There are some concerns, particularly with respect to assignment to administrative duties of not 5, not 6, but more than 10 individuals when these firefighters actually are needed out in stations. And so there is the question of leadership. And if I were to applying my own values and my own understandings of leadership. It is not what I see in the Guam Fire Department right now. I have to say, though, that this has nothing to do with impropriety or illegality. It has to do with the exercise of good judgment and good leadership. And that's what it's all about. The sufficient time and meetings had that would give every member of this body some kind of an idea of what kind of leadership are we going to have in the next 4 years with Mr. John Salas being the fire chief. Right now, every one of us has an idea, a very good, definitive idea of what kind of leadership. And I ask each one of my colleagues to make judgment on that. How do you want to see this Guam Fire Department move forward? Personally, I do not see a very bright light. Granted that there will be time, of course, for learning and guidance and so forth. But here we are talking about the main man, the person who's going to take on the helm and lead the department, not to be led by members of the department, but himself to lead the department. Can he do that? I have my own judgment, and I'll keep it to myself, and I'll express myself when it's time to vote. And I ask my colleagues to consider that. You're looking at him, you know who the individual is. Make your judgment. And that is my presentation, Madam Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Senator Palacios. On the confirmation, Senator Yamashita, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. To tag on to the previous speakers, on the issue of leadership potential of the nominee, I was at the confirmation hearing and I attended at least 2 roundtable conversations where the firefighters were invited to come in to continue dialogue with us. There are ongoing questions and ongoing issues. And frankly, the first time we were all together, the room was full. The room was full of so many people speaking on behalf of the nominee, and I thought that was great. And then he got his chance to speak, and I thought, well, he's just returning from 11-year leave of absence. He had retired 11 years ago and is now returning. And then particular issues, as the previous speaker said, was raised, and we brought them back to continue the conversations, and he wasn't able to join us that one time because he was not well. And we pretty much stopped that conversation because we needed to hear from the nominee himself. And then the second time he did come, and the conversation was not as full as I think we anticipated it to be. But I kept thinking, well, we had a room full of testimony saying this is the person we want. So I said, well, if this is who the firefighters want, then that's fine. They're agreeing, this is what's going to happen. But then as time went on, and there's been at least, I think, 4 weeks since that first confirmation hearing, as I went to more and more community events, more and more firefighters would approach me, or they would send me electronic messages. But when they were face-to-face with me and they would raise concerns about the potential fire chief, I would ask them, why are your concerns not being represented to us during the confirmation hearings? I really didn't understand that. And more often than not, the firefighters would say to me, because this current nominee has brought a sense of calm to their organization, that there is improvement, and they're very appreciative of that. They were very fearful. A few have shared with me that the previous fire chief was going to be reappointed or come back, and that they certainly did not want. So I have written documents, and I've had conversations with firefighters who have said that the particular person that has been nominated, Mr. Salas, is perhaps not the best person to provide the leadership for an agency that has to ensure that we're safe, for an agency that has to ensure that there are prevention issues all around so that we remain safe, for an agency that needs to be visionary and needs to know how to connect all the dots so that when something does happen to our families and to our people, the response is effective and efficient. So I also stand with great reservations about whether or not Mr. Salas is a person who can deliver effectively and efficiently. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you very much, Senator Yamashita. On the confirmation, is there anybody else who would like to speak? Senator Pangilinan, you're recognized.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I think that many of us have been approached by individuals, have either attended or listened in on the proceedings of the roundtable and the confirmation hearing, have received concerns both through correspondence as well as personal face-to-face contact with firefighters, members of the public, and other interested parties with regards to the position of leadership at the Guam Fire Department. And many of us, struggle in this confirmation process. There's one theory that Senator and former Speaker Joe T. San Agustin and I always talk about with regards to the legislative role in the confirmation of the governor's appointees to these positions. And, sometimes he quotes, unless the guy's a scalawag and a scoundrel, he's the governor's choice. And, I see my duty as to advance that, absent that. But then I go back to reading about this history and the struggle between executive and legislative powers. We have the same kind of issue right now, for example, with the Guam Memorial Hospital Board of Trustees. In the governor's nominees, that may not be directed at the nominees, but the whole process of advise and consent and the laws that govern that whole process. I have a book that I have on the side of the bed that I've been reading for the last maybe 2 years now, and it's not very thick, but it's called Lincoln's Men. And it talks about Lincoln and his relationship with the soldiers during the war. And part of the book has about Lincoln's struggle to get his war cabinet approved by the Congress when the Congress did not agree with the appointments and the direction that the war was taking, and how that hampered the war effort in the war between the states. And so those kind of issues, as we go back in history and look and try to learn from and what was the lessons there, as Lincoln was trying to save the Union and keep the Union together while, ensuring that all men are created equal and that everyone has a right to the pursuit of happiness, and that this government cannot, as a policy, treat one person as property and the other as owner. And so in that struggle or the advise and consent of his war chief, the Congress tried to stymie him at certain points. And it wasn't whether the guy was a scandal or a scallywag. It was a debate on who is best able to carry forward this mission, whether one is suitable, whether one is going to be strong and efficient in mobilizing the army and trying to save the Union. And those are the debates. And that's really, it may not be rise to that level, but it is that same principle when we look at the nominee that the governor has sent down for us. That the mission of the Guam Fire Department is absolutely critical to the health and safety of our community as they provide emergency medical services and fire protection services. And while is it good enough to go along and continue the pace and the direction that we're in, or do we need something more? Do we have confidence that the nominee is suitable, is going to be efficient and effective leader to lead the department and ensure the health and safety of our community. And that's the struggle we have. There is no question in my mind, I think, with regards to the career that the nominee has had with the fire department, the positive contributions that he's made over the years. But it has been an 11-year absence. And is that knowledge, that type of leadership, the changes that have occurred in the science of firefighting and the management of young firefighters these days that are just different from 20 years ago or 10 years ago even, is this leadership suitable to lead that department now? And I think that that's what we are all trying to present and debate and decide upon in this body. And it is that same issue that I go back when I read that book, 2 or 3 pages every night before I sleep. That's why I can't finish it. It's that same kind. Is this the right person to achieve the objective of the department and the agency and to lead it and take us in that new direction? And is it the direction we want to go? And is he going to get us there? And so that's the question we have. And all of us, I'm sure, will answer that question in our own way and at the time that it comes to cast our ballot. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Thank you very much, Senator Pangilinan. On the confirmation, is there anybody else who would like to speak on the confirmation? There being none, Senator Espicio on the nomination.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I certainly understand the concerns expressed on the nominee, and because these issues have been raised, I think it also questions automatically the individual's ability to lead the Guam Fire Department just by the very fact that his leadership is being questioned by the legislature, and rightfully so. Madam Speaker, that's exactly what the advice and consent process is, and as the senator who first spoke to raise concerns with the nominee, I also want to say that very rarely do I have any objections with the governor's nominee unless what the previous speaker said in his conversations with the former speaker in how the legislature is justified in not acting. But I rise to a different concern with respect to the same issue, Madam Speaker, and because his leadership is being questioned, I think that if you look at the various departments and agencies of the government of Guam, those agencies where you have paramilitary type structures where they're uniformed personnel, you have to confirm a leader whose leadership is beyond reproach. And the very fact that some of us are rising to express this concern, I also attended his confirmation hearing, and I remember saying that his kind of management style at the Guam Fire Department must be a breath of fresh air. In as much as I support what the senator from Tamuning has said, that if you understand the evolution of the Guam Fire Department and the employees and what they had to go through, particularly over the last 8 years, there was a climate of fear. There was a climate of fear, Madam Speaker, in that in order for those firefighters to talk to the legislature, it had to be through emails or through text messages or through phone calls. They could never, ever do it in public because there was a climate of fear where there was retribution and retaliation. And so now that you have a nominee by way of Acting Fire Chief John Salas, who's come before the legislature, he's supported his employees, and maybe to his own detriment. Supported his employees because if one half wants to do one thing, he agrees. If the other half wants to do another thing that's counter indifference to what that other half wants, he may also agree. And so when we look at this nominee, Madam Speaker, and I want to ask for the body's consideration, I already spoke with the chairman, rather than moving this to the voting file and understanding what his fate may be as we vote on this in this particular session, I move then that this nominee be referred back to committee to either give him more time to generate the support that he needs so that the committee can feel comfortable in moving forward, or that his nomination just expire as it is dealt with through the legislative process. But to move forward without giving him the opportunity to avail himself the to the full 90 days might be doing a disservice, in my opinion. So I move that the nominee be referred back to committee.
On the motion then to refer this nomination back to the committee, hearing no objections, so ordered.
Thank you very much. Madam Speaker, if I can proceed on item 24 from the Committee on Health and Human Services, Senator Rodriguez's committee, Senior Citizens, Economic Development, and Election Reform, on the appointment of Mr. Thomas Morrison to serve as Director of the Bureau of Statistics and Plans. With the committee's recommendation to confirm, I move that that be placed in the voting file.
On that motion, no objection, so ordered.
From the Committee on Health and Human Services, Senior Citizens, Economic Development, and Election Reform, also Senator Rodriguez's committee, on the appointment of Mr. Robert P. Salas to serve as a member of the Guam Economic Development Authority Board of Directors. With his committee's recommendation to confirm, I move that that be placed in the voting file.
On the motion, no objection, so ordered.
From the same committee, Senator Rodriguez's committee, on the appointment of Mr. Benito S. Servino to serve as Director of the Department of Integrated Services for Individuals with Disabilities. With his committee's recommendation to confirm, I move that that be placed in the voting file.
On the motion, without any objection, so ordered.
Item 27 from the same committee, Senator Rodriguez's committee, on the appointment of Dr. Samuel Friedman to serve as a member of the Guam Board of Medical Examiners. With the committee's recommendation to report out, I move that that be placed in the voting file, and I understand that there might be some discussion as well.
On the motion, anyone who would like to speak on the motion? Please state your point of inquiry.
Well, just for the record, Madam Speaker, not to speak
Senators,
for or
please.
against,
Senators,
not to speak for or against, but I do know that on the motion on the committee reports, there was an opposition to that. So I just wanted to make sure that we reflect that there was an opposition to that. So I just wanted to say that.
yes, my understanding.
In response to a point of information,
Well, essentially,
Yeah,
I want you to be able to, can you please restate your motion, because it says recommendation to report out only, then it's not to do confirm, just to report out.
Madam Speaker, if I may, just wanted to make sure, because I thought I saw a couple of objections to that, and I just wanted, if it's the recommendation of the committee to report out, then I have no problem with it. I just wanted to make sure to note for the record that I did see an opposition. Whether or not I'm opposed of it or not, I did see an opposition. So
I'm going to take a brief recess. the legislature is back in session on the recommendation to report out the appointment of Dr. Samuel Friedman. Senator Respicio, you are recognized.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I'll be the first to rise to an objection with this particular nominee. And I, very early on in this process, and after the good chairman on health conducted a public hearing where the nominee's comments were first aired, where he said that he believed that GMH is killing people, immediately I saw that that might be a problem for him in his ability to be on the Guam Board of Medical Examiners. And so I wrote Governor Calvo a letter appealing to his better judgment to withdraw the nominee. And in that letter, Madam Speaker, I said, you know, you just cannot yell fire in a crowded room, or you cannot say that you're carrying a bomb while you're at the Antonio B. Wampat International Airport, or any airport for that matter, without having a consequence. And everything that this individual has raised through his confirmation process or while he was a nominee, I believe has been thoroughly investigated, and there's been a peer review that was released that said that those allegations that he's claiming against certain doctors, certain nurses are all been unsubstantiated. And I understand too that certain doctors have taken him to task by forwarding those complaints to the Attorney General or even the Federal Bureau of Investigation, which there is an active investigation right now. You know, Madam Speaker, when we look at people that we want to appoint to certain boards and commissions, and where we look at what their qualifications are, I certainly would be the first to say that Dr. Friedman is an absolute wonderful physician. He's helped a lot of people in our community. He's extremely credentialed and professional in that regard. We even have a very strong supporter here in this legislative process, and someone who is very influential, Ms. Gloria Nelson, who has rallied up people to petition in support of this nominee. And so there's no question as to his medical ability to continue providing the practice of medicine here on the island. What I rise to a point of an objection specifically is to whether or not he can be objective in his way, in the manner in which he's going to credential physicians here on the island. When he's already made disparaging remarks against physicians in general, when he's already made remarks that have been unsubstantiated and then eventually overturned in one way or another, and then he comes out and apologizes, my concern is that we're going to be putting him on a board, Madam Speaker, where he would have to decide the fate of doctors who are applying to practice medicine here on Guam. And so if he's already making these prejudices and making these comments against certain professions, can you imagine what he could do to a new applicant who has to decide whether or not that doctor should be credentialed? I think with this particular nominee, it's you say something now, and figure out whether or not it's true later. And granted, there are problems at Guam Memorial Hospital, and that entity is struggling and trying to meet the challenges of the healthcare needs of our island. But to just make such a disparaging remark and cast a general aspersion where all of the doctors and nurses, all of the support personnel, all of the people who work there are just killing people, I mean, that's absolutely unconscionable. Madam Speaker, it's not necessary. And it's those kinds of comments that lead to dividing our island. It's very divisive, and it's not productive in any way in the hopes of truly solving the healthcare crisis here on the island. And so I rise for these very reasons to an objection, and I want to make it perfectly clear that I'm not objecting to Dr. Friedman's professional credentials, but more so to the manner in which he handled himself at the public hearing, and even still, when people have come out to dispute and refute what he has said, he's threw on and he tacked on more allegations against the Guam Memorial Hospital and the people there. And so given all the challenges that GMH is facing, the one way to resolve those challenges is not by casting general aspersions. And I think that because the nominee has shown his ability to be prejudiced, I think it'll inhibit his ability to be effective in the Guam Board of Medical Examiners. And so I ask our colleagues for consideration in that motion to send him to the voting file and to vote no if in the event that motion gets there.
Thank you very much, Senator Respicio. On the motion, Senator Ada, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. As the committee report was being circulated, I decided to check off on to not confirm. Now, during the confirmation hearing, I stated for the record, and my vote of not to adopt certainly has nothing to do with or is not an indictment of Dr. Friedman's qualifications as a medical doctor. In fact, Dr. Friedman took care of my mother during her illness, during her bout with cancer, and I thought he did just, he took real good care of her. So certainly my non-support of Dr. Friedman has nothing to do with his medical qualifications. And in fact, because he took care of my mother, and he did so real well, it's difficult for me to stand here and say that I cannot support the individual's nomination to the Board of Medical Examiners. But like the preceding speaker, I too am concerned about just how he conducted himself at the public hearing, at the confirmation hearing. And as a result of the statements that he made, has further really done a lot more negative impact, I think, on the rather fragile confidence that our people have in our only public hospital. And so I was even approached by one of the doctors, and he says, now when patients come in, they first look at my name tag and they say, are you really a doctor? Are you qualified? Because now everybody now is skeptical as to whether the quality of our doctors, or at least a lot of people are skeptical as to the quality of care that our doctors can provide. And so I just feel that on the one hand, I certainly admire the fact that he wants to be an agent of change. I guess just where I disagree with his approach is that if you want to make change, why don't you get yourself in there where in fact you would be in a position to be able to make changes, as opposed to sitting here and just throwing out these, allegations that he was making, which to today has not gotten any legs to stand on. And so because of that, I have concern about an individual like that sitting on a board. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Senator Ada. On the nomination, Senator Chris Twinish, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I also rise in objection to moving this nomination down for voting. I join Senator Tom Ada. I know we're not supposed to use names, I'm sorry. In my feelings about the good doctor's professionalism and acumen in his profession. He treated my father as well. He treated a nephew of mine who unfortunately went to be an angel in heaven. But one question that I asked during the hearing was, how is it that it's gotten to the point where it is so disturbing when we see individuals from this highly regarded, highly esteemed profession that next to God, when our life is in jeopardy, it's basically them. And he agreed that for some reason in our community, we've gone to that level. And I want to state for the record, Madam Speaker, that I ignore calls. And I've gotten to the point now where I ignore emails from other physicians who equally lobby on these bases and the accusations. Madam Speaker, my biggest problem with the statements made by this particular nominee, notwithstanding the fact that we all know that there are concerns from all of us about things that happen at GMH, because that's where we go when the chips are down and our health is in peril. But 4 years of hard work by the hundreds of employees up at GMH to accomplish accreditation, and regardless of what the governor may have thought of this last board and management, accreditation was accomplished. A standard was put in place and accepted by a body that does not evaluate based on politics, that does not evaluate based on so-called, what is the collateral benefit for those who are in that position? They don't. They evaluate based on what are the standards and the deliverables. And in one sentence, in a couple of words put together, 4 years of hard work was erased. And as the good retiring speaker senator from Derido mentioned, it is that kind of judgment and the deliberation on who will serve in our medical community that I cannot see myself agreeing to. It is a high honor and a high call to serve on any board or commission within our community. It is even a higher call when you're going to be approving licensure for those who are going to serve us in our greatest time of need. And I am all for being a rebel rouser. Everybody knows I've created some environments over the years myself with things I've had to deal with. But I don't look for that temperament when making critical decisions that require a balanced, even-minded approach. So, Madam Speaker, I'm prepared to vote. I've decided. I know how I'm going to vote. I did not pass in this last session. I will not pass now. But if we can do this now, I stand in support of just suspending it at this point. Thank you for the opportunity to share on this, Madam Speaker.
Thank you very much, Senator Dueñas. On the appointment, Senator Aline Yamashita.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. As in the previous item, Senator from Barricade, you know, Madam Speaker, I need to learn where all the senators live, because I don't know where everyone lives. But as he spoke about the role of the legislature, I've been thinking about that. What is really our role? And so right now I'm thinking that our role is to work with the executive branch in supporting this executive branch, but at the same time examining and ensuring that our people are being equipped and led by those with the qualities that are needed as we move forward in 2011 and beyond. I think Dr. Sam Friedman has already created tidal waves of attention. Certainly everyone has been asking questions. Patients are insisting that credentials are being looked at. And I suppose that's a very good and unintended outcome. As many of us in this room have done, I have reached out to those in our medical profession who have been working really, really hard, who have dedicated their lives, who have come back to Guam, and have continued to serve our families throughout our island. And I asked them what they thought about Dr. Sam Friedman being on the Medical Examiners Council. And more often than not, these doctors and nurses would say that he's a doctor who has helped many of our families. And we know that. At his confirmation hearing, he had the privilege and the honor of having many of our community leaders at the table speaking high praises and giving thanks for him and his work. And I too gave thanks for his work in helping, because those folks are still alive and with us and are now supporting him. But I've also spoken to patients who have been with him, and their sentiments were not the same. Their experiences were not the same. And I go back to the people in the medical profession who have worked hard to claim the honor of being a medical doctor or a dentist or a psychiatrist or a nurse. And outright, every single one that I've spoken with have said that they do not believe he would serve in the best interests of our island community on the council. That it is one thing to have a knowledge base, to know how to take care of patients, to deliver patient care. And it's another thing to work well with others, to move forward policies and initiatives that will ensure that credentialing and licensing is at the standard that it should be for our island. All of us have been in leadership, all of us are in leadership capacity right now, but many of us have served in a variety of capacities where we know that's so true. We always know that there's someone that we work with who has a genius of an idea, but working well with others to get that genius of an idea born and implemented is something different. I'm very concerned about GMH because that's our hospital, of course. That's where my children were born, and that's where my dad had one of his few remaining days. And the quality of care that I've always experienced was of care and was of high standard. People at the hospital die, and people get better. And it is important that we have standards in place so that our people who go to GMH, either by choice or no choice, are provided the standards of care that they are deserving of with our taxpayer money. And while some choose to go off island, that's their choice. But some of us choose to go to GMH, and some of us don't choose, but that's where we are. And I think that it's really important that we have in place community representatives who have a vision and then know how to get there, hand in hand with others. It doesn't mean that we agree with each other all the time, but it does mean that with the utmost respect and regard, that we argue and we move it forward, that we do not condemn, that we do not put down, that we do not make judgment when there is no judgment to be made. And so, Madam Speaker, I thank you for the opportunity to speak on Dr. Sam Friedman. And again, I've just heard from so many different layers and levels, and there is great concern about him representing the credentialing and licensing of our medical community. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator Yamashita. On the nomination, are there any other speakers? Senator Pangilinan, you're recognized.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I want to, of course, share my thinking with not only my colleagues, but of course the community out there on the matter of the nomination of Dr. Friedman to serve on the Guam Medical Board of Licensure, or Licensure Board. And to kind of encapsulate the discussion and the debate that has occurred, both public and non-public, because in addition to the public debate that's occurred, there's tons of non-public debate that has occurred and information going back and forth. For example, with one of the main impetus for the public debate that occurred on Dr. Friedman's comments that people are being killed at GMH. Not people are dying, they're being killed. And that there's a conspiracy to hide this murder. That's all you can say. If somebody's being killed, then it's murder. It's certainly not self-defense at the hospital. And that there's a conspiracy to hide all this. And he cites the matter and the issue of this woman who was in labor and then cited that it was all a cover-up and that a junior medical student would have not made the same mistake. And it wasn't so much that, it was the cavalierness about this, the confidence that that is correct, true, and fact. And then, of course, we had a roundtable meeting with Dr. Lizama, another of the governor's nominees. See, if we think that Dr. Friedman is the governor's nominee and that's his philosophy and that's how the governor wants to approach fixing healthcare on Guam, then Dr. Lizama is of the same bent. But Dr. Lizama, who is appointed as the medical director of the Guam Memorial Hospital at the behest of the governor and the appointment of the Organic Act Authority of the governor, in the roundtable shared with us the specific case that Dr. Friedman referred to as a woman being killed that would not have happened if she was being treated by a junior medical student. And in there, Dr. Lizama shared to us that the process that occurred in the review of that was that the peer review was impaneled and there was a group of board-certified professionals in that field of medical practice, as well as other board-certified professionals that reviewed the process and the treatment and the outcome, which was unfortunate. And in there, Dr. Lizama mentioned in the report of the review that the standards of care were adhered to with regards to providing the care required to deal with the situation that the doctors was confronted with. And they met the standards of care. And Dr. Lizama verified that and attested at that public hearing that that's what occurred. Now, if I'm to listen to Dr. Lizama, then it was an unfortunate accident. That's why they call it the practice of medicine, I guess. Nobody calls it the art. It's the practice, because they kind of seem to be always practicing that this doesn't work, we're going to practice and try this one. It's not the art, it's the practice. So you do the best you can with the education that you have and the credentials and the experiences that you have in the community that gives you the privilege of practicing and treating the people in the community. And according to Dr. Lizama, everything was adhered to with regards to the practice of medicine and the quality and the standards of care appropriate for the condition of that specific case. Dr. Friedman disagrees, I guess, and says any junior medical student, I don't know if he had the medical file. I don't even know. I do know that he was not part of the peer review because he refuses to get licensed, or the hospital refused to grab his license. I can't even get the straight story on that. Is Dr. Friedman refusing to treat his patients at the hospital when they need to go there because he's afraid that when he treats them, that the care that they get for other than his personal treatment may result in liability to him because he doesn't believe that the quality of care or the standards of care are appropriate for them to give to his patients, so he refuses to go up there? And so when a patient of his has to go up there, somebody else has to come in and treat them, and he has to work with them. We all know that in the translation, things happen. Is that the best standard of care to provide to your patients? If he doesn't want to participate in that process of making things better, I'm curious as to why he wants to participate in this process of making the decision on who can come in and practice on Guam. And there are many debates that occur. On one hand, you have Dr. Friedman, who says that it is this group of doctors who want to control the economic viability, I guess, or the economic riches of their practice. And the more doctors you bring in, the less money they're going to make. So they're going to control the licensing and not bring in specialists that will compete with them. And that's one non-public debate that's going on, and maybe it is public. And I'm just not aware of that, how public that is. And Dr. Friedman's saying, no, bring anybody else you want. Bring them in from Australia, from New Zealand, from Europe, France, Germany, Canada. He brought in an associate from Canada who the former, I guess, Board of Medical Examiners said did not meet the qualification standards that are in our law and in our rules and regulations, and so was not granted. And Dr. Friedman, decided that this is not a place to practice. So I don't know whether it was in response to that, but shortly after that, he got up and he left the island. And doctors in our community stepped up and tried to work with the cancer program, trying to place those cancer patients now to get treatment from both on-island and off-island medical institutions. Is that the type of commitment and behavior that we think is appropriate for making these kind of decisions? Again, all of these are what is being articulated out there, and I have to filter. The philosophy, I guess, that is most important for me is the difference that is being articulated by Dr. Friedman with regards to the practice and the eligibility of the type of training that physicians that we will entrust the people in our community to is one way, and the current established, maybe other doctors in the community, as well as the current established criteria in other jurisdictions, have continued to support. And that is, we have a standard of education, a standard of practice, a standard of residency and internships that unless you go through this process, our confidence in your ability to render quality medical care to our community will be merited or not merited. And so Dr. Friedman, I don't know whether it's to relax that, because in my review or in his articulation, he's saying all of the areas that he's articulating and advocating that we allow to come to Guam are not currently allowed under our current licensing criteria. And so he's saying that his philosophy is open the doors, bring in more doctors from these areas, because we can't bring doctors from the areas where we accept their credentials, where their training, their practice, their specialties and skills meet the standards we want, as well as the standards in other communities. And so is it a relaxing of the standards? I tend to think so. Dr. Friedman, being more, of course, in tune with this, doesn't think so. He thinks that the standards are comparable. But when you take a look at the national licensing boards and whether they say they're comparable, you'll see that some say they're not. So his philosophy is greater accessibility. The established philosophy that we would, I guess by our vote for him, would say we believe that we should continue to be more cautious and careful. And of course, Dr. Friedman saying your caution and your carefulness at this time does not provide the best services and medical care and medical professionals from the other parts of the world. So all of those things are the debates we're looking at. But again, is it that philosophy that I want to support? I don't think so at this time. I'm not comfortable enough to say that I want to go and move in that direction wholeheartedly. And Dr. Friedman is very clear in his desire to do that as a member of the Guam Medical Licensing Board. That is an objective that he has. That is something he has articulated. He believes is good for Guam and good for the community, and I'm sure there's a lot of basis for that thought there. And other members of our community, other members of the licensing boards and credentialing authorities across the nation are saying that's not the direction that we have, based upon our workings with these different entities, believe is the right direction to go. So am I going to trust Dr. Friedman, the singular individual, or am I going to rely on the presentations of our current doctors and trust them, as well as the national institutions responsible for looking at these things? At this time, I'm going to fall on the other side, that there is merit to what Dr. Friedman's saying, but a wholehearted move in that direction, I don't believe is the best direction at this time for this community. Now, has anything good occurred out of this? I believe so. I think Dr. Friedman has made already a tremendous contribution to shaking the tree and improving the system and the processes here on Guam. I think that his statements have woken us up, have maybe provided some real soul searching on the other side that says we have to do better and we have to do more. And we will have other nominees from the governor who may not be as disruptive maybe that Dr. Friedman has had, who may be better suited and better able to make the collaborative efforts to make these improvements and change some of the processes, and that we may look at and see that it doesn't have to be their way or no way at all. And is that the way to go? Is that the way to make the improvements in our healthcare system, in our processes, in bringing in better people, in screening out inappropriate people? We need a lot of work. We need a lot of things to do. And Dr. Friedman has at least, at the very minimum, but it is a big and large minimum, has said, open your eyes, folks, everyone. And all of the individuals now that we will put forth in these positions will not only be more accountable to themselves, because they see that there's a new awareness, they'll be more accountable to the governor, they'll be more accountable to the other employees and professionals that they practice with, they'll be more accountable to this legislative body, and they'll be more accountable to the patients that they treat. So there has been a tremendous effort and positive result out of this. But is that enough to say we're going to move forward and change the entire direction and entire philosophy? I don't believe it's enough for me. And so, Madam Speaker, I offer these thoughts so that there can be an understanding of the thinking and examination of this whole debate on this issue. I'm, have been listening and reading everything that has been said. And I understand really the connection that patients that have benefited from the medical expertise of Dr. Friedman has, that they've developed between themselves and Dr. Friedman. As somebody who has gone and faced some major medical issues in his life, I understand the connection, the trust that one builds between the doctor and myself. And there are doctors that I have right now that nobody will ever convince me that they can do no wrong. And when it comes to our relationship and the treatment that they give me, I place myself in their hands. But on the matter of making a determination for the administrative side of medicine on this issue of credentialing and so forth, that I have to divorce myself from that type of emotional connection and make the decision from a greater and more expansive scope and examination in terms of its impact to our community and those that practice here. You know, Madam Speaker, I once heard that the way that these doctors present their arguments, it is as if really they are gods. But you know, as I always told my good friend Dr. Akimoto during a public hearing when he was taking me to task, and I said, Dr. Vince, you know what's the difference between God and a doctor? And he goes, what? I said, God doesn't think he's a doctor. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
There's Marcy, Senator Pangilinan, and on the nomination, Senator Rodriguez, you're recognized.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I want to take this opportunity to say thank you. Thank you to the nurses, to the doctors, and to the staff of the Guam Memorial Hospital Authority. I think it's well-deserved, and it's very fitting because what has transpired over these past few weeks, Madam Speaker, has caused a lot of pain, has caused a lot of undue stress with those individuals, and really with a lot in the community. You know, on the other hand, Madam Speaker, believe it or not, I have a word of thanks as well for Dr. Friedman. Just like Speaker Ben said, you know, I think he needs to be recognized for shaking the tree. And it brought to the forefront, it highlighted the importance of patient care and the delivery of quality healthcare services at our only civilian hospital. However, the manner and the approach that this appointee chose was really was very bothersome to me. He made specific allegations of wrongdoing at the hospital, allegations, Madam Speaker, that needed to be brought to the proper authorities, and not in front, and not at a public hearing. The board that Dr. Friedman was appointed to serve and to sit on, Madam Speaker, is a board that provides a licensure for every physician, every doctor that will practice not only at the hospital, but at the clinics and every public health facility on Guam. At the hospital, there's a process, there's a peer review process that this appointee had said wasn't there and wasn't happening. So I took that and I said, I need to find out for myself if there is a process in place and if that specific incident that this appointee had mentioned at a public hearing went through that peer review process. And Madam Speaker, it did. Actually went to 2 peer review process. And the statements that were made at the public hearing were false. Right now you have our community, you have people that come to the hospital and question the doctors that treat them. And one physician, this professional, I felt, my heart just sank when this physician came to see me, an older gentleman, and had tears coming down his eyes and said, I was helping a patient that was about to give birth, and she was in pain, and she was demanding for a painkiller. But this physician said, you know, I can't prescribe that to you right now because of your state, what kind of state she's in. And the husband of this lady bursted out at the doctor, cursed him out, and said, you know what that guy said at the public hearing is true. It's true about this hospital. You don't care about us, the patients. And Madam Speaker, that's the pain that I'm talking about that this appointee has caused in the community. That's the undue pain and stress. This appointee, Madam Speaker, either he refuses, I don't know the story as well, or was not allowed to practice at the hospital. He has his own clinic. At the hospital, you have procedures in place. You have other physicians that review your charts and see what kind of care you're providing. For this specific physician, if you don't practice and you have your own clinic, I question who looks at your charts? Who looks at those procedures that you carry out? And to sit on a board such very critical and important as the Guam Board of Medical Examiners, I think you need to emulate those standards that you are going to demand and require for other physicians to practice. So, Madam Speaker, I hope that I've shared some of my thoughts on this issue. And I want to thank my colleagues in this body for supporting the effort in making sure that this confirmation process of Dr. Friedman, no matter how contentious it was, to move forward. And I'm hoping that the appointee as well will see that this body, this legislature, the Committee on Health did its due diligence in ensuring that this confirmation process was fair. So thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Thank you very much, Senator Rodriguez. There are objections. I'm going to call then for the vote to send the nomination down to the voting file. Yes, Senator.
No,
Oh,
I
I
didn't make a
didn't
motion
hear
to move
that.
it
I
back to
didn't-
committee, but I'd like to withdraw my objection so the matter can proceed to the voting file.
But there are several others who also spoke in objection, so therefore, so you're right. So the question will be if since there are, yes.
Case, then I'll withdraw my motion also so that the matter can proceed to the voting file, but still maintain my position.
Yes, okay, I understand. So then the motion then now would be then to send the nomination to the voting file without any objections, so ordered. We're going to take a recess. There are several things actually happening this afternoon. If you can please join Senator Guthertz in the public hearing room for a couple of resolution presentation and then also another event on the other side of the building. So we are in recess until 2 this afternoon.